Welcome back. This week I'm looking at the recently released Skul, the Hero Slayer. As I am incapable of going any length of time without reviewing a retro-style roguelike, here we are again. And before I go on, please consider subscribing. I try to bring at least one review a week, time willing, giving my honest opinion. Thanks. If I could just lift my high-level overview of many other games and pop it here, Skul is a 2D pixel art roguelike. Here you play Skul, or Little Bone as he is known, who must fight through the hordes of Imperials and save the Demon King. Simple enough then. Little Bone is capable of many things. In his normal or base form he can throw his own head at the enemy, or anywhere really, and then teleport to it. But there's more at play here, and if it was just this one incarnation, I doubt the game would have a great deal to separate itself from the hundreds of other retro-style roguelikes out there. There's a vast array of heads to find here, and they transform our bony protagonist into something else entirely. There's a shield bearer, a werewolf, a mage, a rogue, a ghoul, there's even Ghost Rider. To name a few, these come with their own benefits. Some have special moves that are on cooldowns, while others will intrinsically alter your existing moveset, such as the dash or the jump. It doesn't end there. You can have two forms, and swapping between these two will see you bust out a move related to that head. So the base head is a spinning attack, for example, when you swap back to it. The ghoul, for example, chops its foes into bloody chunks, then eats them, making it larger and much more powerful. And the spearman will damage his foes when dashing normally. It goes on. It invariably leads to some devastating combos. It's clearly what the game is all about. They line them up, you knock them down. As touch damage is not a thing for most mobs, it's easy to get a good flow going. Of course the enemy does fight back, and in larger groups it can be sometimes hard to see when they're going to attack. In addition, there are numerous power-ups to find throughout your run. Some increase damage and crit, others are on use items that have a cooldown, some have a chance to poison enemies or ignite, leave a bomb behind when you swap to your alternate body, and so on. These can be found at the end of any given section or purchased from the shop that you will come across throughout. Where you find heads you may not want, or want to swap out for another one, you can break down the unwanted skull for some bone fragments. These are per run, so not a permanent resource like the dark quartz. You trade these in with this thing, whatever it may be, to upgrade your current outfit, as it were. It adds a neat layer to proceedings and adds another choice of which doors to take, as you might decide you want to upgrade the skull you have or take a punt on a different head. Just to note, your base head and legendary heads cannot be upgraded. Aside from some NPCs that you can save and they will serve you back in the castle hub, there are also some that you can find which will offer you various rewards as well. Like one gives you bone fragments, for example, so just keep an eye out for the cages. The goal on any screen is to simply clear it of all the enemies before you can progress to the next, and at the end you get a choice of two doors. The colour and graphic informs you of the reward that you can get from the next room. So green, it'll be another head, gold piled up, it's gold. It's a funny game. At first I didn't really like it, and the combat was a bit slow and heavy. I wondered what all the positive praise was about, though it's not long until you find a few new heads and grasp the core combat mechanics. These games live or die on the combat responsiveness and fluidity of control, and despite some of my initial misgivings, it's a fairly solid entry in a very crowded space. There are a semi-decent variety of enemies on offer. You'll soon learn what each one does, so there's a plus point for the telegraphs and the individual enemy design, just you'll be facing off against the same ones over and over, this being a roguelite, and some are just plain annoying depending on where they are positioned. Midway through a level you will come up against a human mini-boss. These are random to a point in that there's a few different types and you don't know which one you're going to get each time, so there's a cleric, the knight, mage and so on. They vary widely in difficulty as well, so just be warned. Then on later levels you'll face several of them at once. Come to the end of a level and you'll face off against its big boss. The fun in this game, for me at least, comes from a huge screen full of enemies, smashing them up and mowing them down with your Ghost Rider head or your ghoul. The bosses are a chore for the most part. Facing off against them run after run grows tiresome. pretty quick. You can become very powerful very quickly if luck is on your side, but even if it isn't, the base head's fairly powerful and fun. It's still one of my favourites just for its diverse manoeuvrability alone. So we have the usual suspects: pixel graphics, permadeath, randomised levels, and permanent progression outside the main game, the meta. Collect dark quartz from your kills on your many runs and trade them back at your base with the witch, where you respawn upon death. Here you can purchase permanent upgrades to aid you going forwards: extra HP, crit, head swap, cooldown reduction, the usual. Then here you also have some select NPCs that you will have saved throughout that will give you a new head or item before your next run. The first one's free, and if you want more before that run, you'll have to use some of your quartz to buy extra. Graphically, it's what it is. Look at it. You know what you're getting with these games. I would say animation-wise, it's not up there with similar titles. It's a bit stiff, as it were. Certainly doesn't flow as well as Dead Cells, for example. Sound-wise, it's okay. The music, again, is pretty much what you'd expect. The hub music's very relaxing, but you'll get sick of the first level music rather quick, I would warrant, especially by run 40. Just a quick side note, while I remember, when you die you also get a message that the enemy's gained experience. I did think at first this was a game mechanic, but what I've read from a dev post, it's just a joke. I get the joke, albeit not very funny, but I think you'll find many players will actually believe this is a core mechanic of some sort. So is this your next Dead Cells, Hades or Rogue Legacy? It's what you want to know, isn't it? No, it's nowhere near. It's not a terrible thing. It's a pretty solid title, it's just not up there with the best. It starts off fairly strong and challenging, but I did find later levels lack the appeal and structure of the earlier ones. They just feel weaker in design. And some of the more platform-based screens are outright annoying. You can clear the first wave all the way over to the right, and then a load of random mobs will spawn all the way back to the left again, and it just puts a huge kink in the flow. I think some of these layouts and spawn locations need looking at, to be honest. The selection of skulls is great, although some are overpowered compared to others. It's not even close, and I get that some are rare and others common and so on. I'm just not sure how I feel about this kind of imbalance in such a game. I think if you create a roguelike or light and attach that tag to it, it comes with a very heavy burden, and that burden is the expectation of players, which is usually that a game of this genre will hold many, even hundreds of hours of play, and I can't see this being the case with this title. It gets repetitive very quickly, probably around the 7 or 8 hour mark for me. I already know it's not going to hold my attention like some of the big hitters. If you like this type of game, you'll probably enjoy this one, but if you're well versed in these games, I don't think it'll take you long to bash through it and move on to the next. An issue many a game of this ilk suffers from, and benefits in some cases, is RNG, as I've already mentioned, and you're rarely at its mercy here, as I appreciate the rarity, as I've said, of the skulls, and they range from being so overpowered to just a bit boring. You can get really stiffed by RNG here. Naturally, the counter-argument to that is, well, you just play the hand you dealt, it's a roguelike. Well, that's fair enough. I recall seeing several reviews of Rogue Legacy and Dead Cells, and it being people's first roguelike experience, and from there they've delved deeper into other games in that genre. I can't see this being the case here. There's little here that would change the mind of those that are not a fan of the roguelike loop and 2D pixel style games, in my opinion. At the start of the review, I asked, what does this do to separate itself from a very crowded market? And the answer, of course, is the variety of skulls. Unfortunately to me, what it does not do is back that up with varied environments, exciting gameplay, or a particularly addictive loop. It's available on PC now, it's 12 quid on Steam, it's usually around 15, so if you fancy it, get it while the offer's on. Cheers.